Okay, so this week, or not this week, but recently a couple of articles have come out, Peter, that I think make for interesting discussion. And I was hoping we could go through a couple of them. We'll save the Department of Defense one for next time, but we've got a couple good ones to kind of scratch at a little bit. So why don't I share my screen real quick and you can tell us about this first one. Can you see that?
Yes.
So tell us about this. What happened? What was going on here? This case. Describe kind of what happened and what this means from an AI perspective.
This case happened back in May. Apparently, a person was filing a lawsuit against an airline, and his legal counsel had done some research and had cited some um, existing cases that they claimed backed up their argument. When the airline's lawyers looked at the citations, they couldn't find some of them. That got the judge kind of a bit peeved, and he asked him, like, hey, what happened? And apparently one of the lawyers on the plaintiff side, the guy that's suing the airline, had used ChatGPT, and it had fabricated some case law that didn't actually exist. And the punchline is that judge now is making lawyers pledge to not use ChatGPT, or that if they do, they're going to have a human manually verify that what they're citing is actually true.
One of the most astonishing lines in that article was that the lawyer who used the tool told the court he was unaware that its content could be false.
That could be true, or it could be a convenient lie.
Yeah, you might be right. Although it takes some balls to say that in court, that you didn't know it could be false.
Well, I mean, that's probably a lower risk than saying, oh, we knew that ChatGPT could lie, but we didn't actually bother to check, because then that's malpractice.
Yeah.
So that's your choice. It's like you can admit that you didn't know, which makes you look really dumb, or you can admit that you knew and then it's malpractice. And
So what's fascinating about this too is that I think something like 6 or 8 of the things, 6 of the submitted cases appear to be bogus. So these were fabricated by the chatbot.
right.
How does that work? How does that like physically happen? Like, how does the machine do that? Where instead of just saying, here's only 2 cases that even relate to this, it created a response that was fabricated. Like, how did it lie?
So the punchline is that ChatGPT, so the first part of that GPT is generative, meaning that it generates stuff. And what it does is it takes this base of knowledge that's in its system, and it generates something based on what's in it. It has no actual understanding of what true or what false is. It just knows it's learned all these things about the language, about vocabulary, syntax, grammar, and some facts, and how things relate to each other. And its main goal is to complete a sentence or complete a paragraph. So if you say, give me some case law that backs up this argument, it's going to generate based on that, because you're asking it to complete this sentence for me, or complete this paragraph for me.
So in this sense, it is, instead of trying to provide case law, it's trying to provide a sentence.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where it gets wrapped around the axle.
Yep.
Because then it's like, well, this is what case law could or would look like based on all the other millions of things I've just consumed. So I'll
Right.
create a sentence and it just created a lie, essentially.
Right. And so the next couple months, or probably later this year, they're going to hook up plugins from ChatGPT into databases like case law databases or Bing search, and actually search actual databases for actual things.
Hmm.
So right now it doesn't. They're working on it.
Okay.
Eventually, it's going to search those databases, but that's not a foolproof guarantee. It can still generate stuff that isn't true. Like, for example, if I say I'm writing a mystery novel or murder novel about a plaintiff suing a business, generate some likely case law, it'll do it.
Yeah.
Because it's in the realm of fiction now. It's not an actual human being suing an actual corporation.
Let's look at the next one here. So here we've got a professor that seems to have, if I had to guess, he's a little older. He seems a little angry.
Yeah.
And this is from May, it looks like. So he essentially incompleted about either all or some of the class until they could prove that they hadn't used ChatGPT, right?
Yep.
I thought it was funny here that he was repeatedly using a misspelling of ChatGPT that people commonly use called ChatGTP.
Yeah.
But anyway, it sounds like he was a little angry, ChatGPT shit is what I think what he was calling it or something.
Yeah.
But this one kind of just lingers. Like they didn't really resolve a bunch of this. Maybe there was one student that admitted that he had or she had used some help earlier, but I don't know that anyone admitted to using help for this particular assignment of this final. What was your read on this? And what's going to happen in higher ed with this going forward?
It's going to be tricky because it's an arms race between people using it and people that want to prevent others from using it. But ultimately, I figure eventually people realize, okay, I can ask the system, be it OpenAI or Microsoft or Google, give me a rough draft. But then they have to go in and they have to then manually like edit and change. So in a sense, you're really just asking these tools to make you an outline rather than just say generate an essay for me that's 3 pages about this topic and then turning it in. Because if you do that, it's going to get to the point where universities might log students' traffic to services like ChatGPT, and then they'll be able to prove like, hey, these students used it the night before the assignment was due, and we had the network logs to show it.
I guess one of the questions sort of philosophically that could come up out of this is if a paper or an assignment can be completed in 4 seconds by ChatGPT, was the assignment any good?
I would argue that the assignment is questionable because it's not really measuring if you really actually understood the subject. But that was true even before these tools.
Right. This is an extension of, plagiarizing something out of the Encyclopedia Britannica that we
Yeah.
paid a bunch of money for from some, door-to-door salesman, right?
Right. And even when we were in college, I knew people that were writing essays for other students.
Yeah, that
For
too.
money.
Yeah. In fact, you might have been one of them.
So like, I know that a lot of non-English lit people were asking lit majors to write them essays because like one, they can be bothered, or two, they suck at writing, or three, they just had better things to do. And
One other
so,
thing that I noticed in this article, which I was hoping you could elaborate on, was these detection platforms, plagiarism detection, and this one, which I love the name, Turnitin.
yep.
Um, what will happen with the sort of AI versus AI arms race, in terms of being able to fool the system or the school in this case, and the school being able to, catch up and spot the fool, essentially.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tricky. I mean, as time goes on, more of these services like Turnitin are gonna have to get more educated about how do you detect when something's generated. Um, and eventually it'll get to the point where, let's say someone starts another company that's a competitor to Turnitin, and they start by getting samples of your actual writing, and then they generate essays based on your style. It's going to get really tough for universities to look for generic things and detect that it was generated by one of these platforms like OpenAI, because now it's specifically tailored to you, and unless they have that data set it was trained on, it's gonna have it'll have a it can't give you 100% confidence. It'll say we think it's 60% chance of it being generated. So it's not, it's still gonna require a human to then read it and go, oh, okay, was this generated or did this student actually write it?
Right.
Um, like I know that a lot of teachers look for kind of common misspellings that student does, or common kind of wordings that are convoluted that student would tends to use. Um, and so from that perspective, could you train a detection service to handle all 10,000 students at a university? And the answer is no.
And, do you want to?
Right. It's not good use of
Again,
time.
you know, how different is it if, I mean, apart from a student literally putting the prompt in, creating the paper, never reading it and
Yep.
turning it in, I would guess that most students would get the result and then do some editing, maybe massive editing, right?
Right.
At least if it were me, I would at least try to make it sound like something I would write. Like if I
Yeah.
like to write with more periods and shorter sentences, I would do that, right? And in the process of doing that, I would probably learn whatever the
Yeah.
assignment was, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be curious to see. It just seems to me like this is no different than what Google or Wikipedia has
Yeah.
done already to
Yeah.
education. It's just kind of on steroids because it can whip it out really quickly.
Right. But ultimately, for me, students really just cheating themselves. I mean, they're spending, depending on where you go, anywhere from 30K to 80K a year. And yeah, sure, you rather go out partying Thursday, Friday night instead of spending that time writing an essay. But
Right.
once you graduate, mom, dad aren't going to pay for everything anymore. What are you going
Right.
to do?
Unless you feel like you're just competing against other people that are using ChatGPT. Let's go to this third story. This was Google's
Right.
this is their chat bot or whatever,
Yep. Bard.
Bard. Any idea where that name came from, by the way?
I think that originated from an internal project name, but I don't know for sure. That's the rumors. So
Okay.
I can't confirm or deny that that's the case. Um,
What is this story? What happened here?
When OpenAI's service got popular, Google was kind of caught flat-footed and had to basically tell the world, hey, we're leaders in AI. So they took an internal project, BARD, and quickly productized it. And in doing so, when they had the press announcement, they had a demo and they had asked a prompt, a question, and it generated false data or data that wasn't correct. um, so that just goes back to the two previous cases of like, well, it's going to generate stuff. It's up to the human to verify that it's actually true.
In this case, the false data had something to do with a telescope, and
Right.
that made a statement, I think, that it was the first to do something, or
Correct.
oh, here it is. In September of last year, Webb took its first picture of an exoplanet, but that wasn't the first ever picture of an exoplanet. So it looks like it got a little confused, huh?
Right. Yeah, because I think the Hubble telescope had in the past taken pictures, but obviously it wasn't nearly as detailed as the Webb telescope.
This is the line that I thought was interesting, which you addressed earlier, that information in a language model is not pulled from lists of facts and recited, but spat out by very sophisticated systems for completing sentences.
Yep.
That seems like a well, let me ask this question. Was that a choice that someone in the AI space made, where they're like, I don't know how we're going to get it to figure out facts, but we could maybe do it in a way that it could complete a sentence? Was that a decision, or did it just happen organically?
So originally, the paper was about translating from one language to another. If we go back, originally, translation services was written by hand by programmers, and one of the earliest ones was like Dragon Natural Speech, and a couple other ones from IBM, and those were all hand coded by programmers, and it took years and years to build those. And then when Google started its translation service, they took the transcripts from UN meetings, because it's the same content translated into like 30 or 40 or 100 different languages. And what they did was they just took all that data and chunked it up and just mapped it. So like this sentence equals to this sentence, this phrase equals to this phrase. So that was like between 2000 and 2010.
Hmm.
When the Transformer paper came out, they said, okay, we can build a model that'll translate from one language to another in an automated way that's more sophisticated. So there's two things. One is when it trains it, it randomly removes words. It says and asks the model to predict it. And it does that by using this thing called attention, which is kind of like a short-term memory. It remembers like, oh, I saw these words. So that's what's important is this thing about it. And the likely words that might appear after these words is this. And as you train it for millions of iterations, it figures out like, oh, these are the words that would follow these other words. And so the basic process was, it was really built to translate from one language to like English to German, German to French, and so on. But then people realized like, oh, actually, this is really good for just modeling language in general. And so then that's what kind of shot this into this whole other space.
Last question for you today. Do you think that AI will have sort of a sidecar project where it will get out of this completing sentences model, essentially, and have another model that is a little bit more, fact data driven and solves the problem another way?
Yeah, I mean, there's different approaches that are being explored. The main one right now, that the easiest one is have a plugin. So basically, you give it a prompt, say, hey, um, give me some suggestions for things to serve at a party. So ChatGPT will do its thing. It'll look at what it's trained on and say, oh, common things are soft drinks, hot dogs, hamburgers, and watermelon. So it can do that. Then the next step is you could take those generated responses and then check some external database, some other service, like maybe a food channel or maybe a food database, and then score that result and then return you something that's been filtered additional times to give you better results. So that's the easy one. The harder one is to actually have it understand concepts. Like, what is a party? Currently, large language models based on transformers don't really understand what a party is. It only understands party in the context of what it's been trained on. So like a pool party is no different than a birthday party because like it doesn't know the difference, but a human would.
Maybe a good conversation someday would be, does AI understand the definition of the word run?
Right now, it doesn't really. It understands grammar, understands syntax, and it memorizes facts. That's it.
Great. Well, this is super helpful. Good press that we could cover, good stories, and good sort of either canaries in the coal mine or just flaws in the system that are kind of fun to see as this thing kind of evolves.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
All right.